Over the past 40 years, during which time the modern crop circle phenomenon has been taking place, numerous researchers have appeared on the scene. Many of them offer up their particular theories, attend some lectures and maybe write books, but usually they only stay around for a few years before disappearing into the wilderness. They either succumb to the intense political situation between the hoaxers or become frustrated that they can't fully explain the mystery of this highly enigmatic phenomenon. Sadly, only a handful of researchers have stayed around for any great length of time, and through their dedication and perseverance, they have provided great insights into the nature and meaning behind the phenomenon. However, with almost 30 years of experience under his belt, Professor Michael Glickman rose to the top of these exceptional few and made a contribution that arguably surpassed most in the field. A professor of architecture who taught at the University of Southern California, as well as a designer who worked alongside the world-renowned Charles Eames, Michael uniquely brought a wealth of expertise to his crop circle research.
I started researching crop circles in 1997, and in those early days I read as many books as I could get my hands on, and I went to lectures and I studied everything I could find. And one of the people that stood out to me was Professor Michael Glickman. I remember attending one of his early lectures where he spoke to me in a way that appealed to me. He was very grounded and he knew how to make things on planet Earth. And my dad was a bricklayer, a very practical man. And when Michael said, anybody that understands how to make things in this world knows how difficult it is. They know how problems arise, how mistakes are made, and that no building project ever comes in on time. His practicality and his passion appealed to me, and it was a great honour for me to become a friend and a working colleague with him from 2007. I learnt so much from that man, not just about geometry and crop circles, but also how to behave more as a human being, how his love spilled out and touched people, and it touched me immensely. He's a great loss to me, and it's been a great honour for me to make this movie in dedication of the 30 years that he dedicated towards the crop circles.
Coming from this background, Michael felt qualified in his vehement opposition of the man-made theory, as well as the hoaxers who claim that they make all the crop circles.
I was an architect. I was a professor of architecture in California. In both of these situations, the student and the teacher, I never came across the wisdom and understanding that the circles have brought me. This has been yet another astonishment.
Michael's technical experience enabled him to approach the subject in a methodical way, where he would measure the crop circles and survey the land with a theodolite in order to gain a highly detailed perspective of the formation. Transferring this information to his computer, he would then painstakingly reconstruct the formations in order to carry out a detailed analysis.
You've been making the statement for the past couple of years that there are no man-made crop circles. What do you mean by that?
What I mean is that there are many jobs carried out as contractors for advertising and public relations operations, and they're done with a degree of skill, I have to say. There are also occasional attempts to forge, replicate crop circles by messes made by vandals in fields. That's two categories. The third category is the fact that every single crop circle that comes down the field is sooner or later claimed by somebody. But effectively, they don't make crop circles. The crop circles are a separate event. It's like chalk and cheese.
So you're drawing a distinction between
The categories of damaged crop.
So you acknowledge that people can go out and make fairly good works of art in fields by stamping down wood?
I would acknowledge that as contractors, when they are supplied, number one, with a blank lawful canvas in the full light of day, and number two, a drawing, they can then do it in a reasonably competent way. But number one, in a limited time in the dark, and number two, they have not proved in over a quarter of a century that they could design their way out of a wet paper bag.
Karen and Steve Alexander have been around in the crop circles for years, and they work together as a husband and wife team. Karen and her psychoanalytical knowledge, together with her study of geometry, has made a major contribution towards thinking and thoughts and ideas around what the crop circles could mean. And Steve is a great photographer. He goes out and takes photographs of the crop circles, and every year they produce a yearbook and publish articles on their websites with great illustrations that inform the public about the deep nature of this phenomenon.
His relationship with that man-made side of things, as you know, it was always contentious. I actually think it got more contentious the older he got. In fact, I was looking back at a video of him just recently where he was sort of, I think it must have been taken in around 2004. And he was talking about how, you know, that year there'd been some brilliant formations, which there undoubtedly had been. But he was also talking about the hoaxing side of it and sort of saying that he felt that there'd been a lot of hoaxing going on that year. And that is something that you would never have heard him say later on in his life. You know, later on in his life, it was kind of, you know, the man-made side of it. In some ways, it wasn't part of his consciousness. It didn't impact on his thinking towards the subject at all. Whereas I think perhaps earlier in his career, he's sort of been more willing to consider it. But I think at the end of the day for him, that wasn't really what mattered. I mean, to him, what mattered was, you know, what was going on in the fields, what that meant, you know, for us, you know, for the human race, for the world, for whatever. I think that was the thing that was on his mind the most. And I think sometimes we all get caught up in it, don't we? We all get caught up in the politics of subjects like this. But I think, you know, towards the end, I think he really had a very clear vision of what was important to him. And I think that side of it wasn't important to him anymore. He wanted to concentrate on what he felt was real and what he felt was important.
There's no way. There's no way. I mean, the idea of it being a man-made enterprise is as realistic as the tooth fairy.
Yeah, but these points that you're taking the time to present as to people who don't notice these things, you're making these points so that it substantiates that case, is it not?
No, I suppose. I mean, the case for me is as stupid as arguing about Santa Claus. I mean,
But you're making it. You're going out there and making the case. And
no, I'm making the case not that the crop circles are real, because I feel that the reality of the crop circles is a waste of time to discuss now, for me. I mean, I can't trivialize my life further by giving this time. What I'm concerned about now more is the generosity of spirit and the creativity of the culture which gives this to us. And you go, and people say, oh, late crop, oh, it's a crop circle, eh? What time's lunch? You know, and it pains me. It pains me, really.
Lucy Pringle's been around for many, many years. She's an amazing character, really, amongst the crop circles. She's a great photographer. She goes up and takes photographs of the crop circles, and has also done some very interesting research into the effects that the crop circles have on people. She's particularly studied people with Parkinson's disease and other ailments, and she's got scientific studies which show the differences in their blood and thyroid levels from when they are outside a crop circle, when they go in, and then the effect on them afterwards. She's another woman that's made a very great contribution to the crop circle phenomenon.
He was a brilliant mathematician and geometer, wasn't he? And he used to draw up the geometry of the circles just after they'd formed. And it was an immaculate geometry. I remember that one of the Martinsell Hill, which contained all the isosceles triangles, the right-angle triangles. Well, actually, isosceles triangles. I think you'll be better at me than remembering that, because I'm not a geometer. But I remember it was absolutely mind-blowing, that formation, and he did it. He did it. How he did it, I don't know.
Bert Janssen got into the crop circles in around 1995, I believe. He comes from a mathematical background, and he was initially inspired by Michael Glickman when he first came to the crop circles. It was Michael that in fact grabbed his attention and showed him that with the deep hidden implicit geometry that's in crop circles, that there's a great deal more to know about them. And since then he has published several books, lectured around the world, and made a major contribution to our understanding of the hidden and implicit geometry that we find inside crop circles.
I came for the first time to England to look at these crop circles in 1995, and I do have a mathematical background, but I didn't know anything about these circles. I thought they were circles. And then I met Michael Glickman, and he showed me there was much more to these circles than just circles. And it really, really triggered something in me when I came back in 1996. And I arrived in England, so you have to imagine, I have to drive the whole way from Holland. I arrived in England. I have driven now for nearly 10, 12 hours. I arrived at the Barge Inn. That was the place to be in those years. And just at that moment, Michael Glickman leaves the building. And He looks at me, he said, "Ah, welcome, my friend from Holland. You want to see a crop circle that appeared at Stonehenge? I'm just going to do some measurements there." So I said, "Okay." So I got back in the car. I've been 5 minutes in England, drive with Michael to Stonehenge, and go in this crop circle. There's all these circles, and Michael does his thing. And I asked him, said, "What is it actually we're looking at here?" And then he showed me an aerial photo, and it turned out to be the Julius set next to Stonehenge. And I couldn't believe it. And that was the moment that I thought, I need to know more. This is mathematics I see here. I see a fractal, and I see Michael doing his things with his theodolite, I think it was called. And that was it. It started there, actually, at that moment.
It was around 1993 when Michael met up with fellow researcher John Martineau, who had discovered that within many of the crop circles lay a hidden or implicit geometry, which Michael said opened up a whole new world for him and set the stage for his research in the years that followed. It was his work with this hidden geometry, combined with his technical surveying skills, that went on to inspire other serious researchers to follow this line of inquiry, leading them to discover even more hidden treasures within the formations.
I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think he's the major, or was the major proponent of interest and exploration of crop circle geometry. I think because he came from an architectural background and also somebody who designed and made things, he worked in the sort of building concrete sort of business, and you know, he knew how things were made in the world, and you would often hear him say, you know, that was his background. That's kind of how he approached the subject, but also, you know, from the design point of view as well. And you know, he absolutely had an eye for it. You know, he could pick a good design from a bad one, you know, in seconds. And I think he knew when he saw the crop circles just how special they were, you know, from a design point of view, and just how different and how similar in some ways they were from designs, you know, that he had known and worked with, and from traditional backgrounds as well. So, and I think he was very much influenced by a very young John Martineau when they first met, because at the time John was studying under Keith Critchlow at the Prince's School, and had just written his thesis, which was about the geometry of the solar system. And I think that just blew Michael's mind. You know, and the two of them were sort of like that ever after. And I think that sort of got him thinking about, you know, how could we apply some of that to the crop circles? You know, how could we look at those kinds of ratios and proportions and investigate how they operate with the crop circles? And that idea of looking for a hidden geometry, not just the sort of geometry that you see right before you, but looking for that is hidden, I think, is kind of one of his biggest legacies to the subject.
During his career as a crop circle researcher, Michael published 6 books on the subject, including Chronography, A New Swirled Order, and Crop Circle, published by the popular Little Wooden Book series. But with more than 8 years in the writing, his book entitled Crop Circles, The Bones of God, is unique among books on this modern enigma. In that, it combines the author's first-hand field encounters with some of the most famous crop circle formations, such as Elton Barnes in 1990 and Silbury Hill in 1997, as well as more recent circles, with intricate and dazzling analysis of the structure and content of those formations. The book is a beautiful illustrated mix of personal narrative with detailed study, which informs a larger discussion of the role of crop circles in the modern world and their unprecedented promise of new chapters in the history of consciousness. It is highly recommended reading for anyone interested in understanding more about the phenomenon. In 1991, a formation appeared at Barbury Castle, UK, which intrigued Michael a great deal. He was particularly fascinated with the ratcheted spiral at the bottom left-hand corner of the formation, but after having spent 17 years trying to understand it, he was at a complete loss as to its meaning. But then, some 17 years later in 2008, an incredible formation appeared in the same location, which also contained a ratchet spiral. Michael felt certain that there was a connection with the 1991 formation and immediately began his analysis.
Well, in 2008, of course, the Barbury Castle pie formation arrived, and it was a beautiful crop circle just to look at it. It was beautifully made. All those sort of formations in barley, when they hit the barley and it's just right, they just look fantastic. And of course, it was very similar to the Barbury Castle 1991 formation with the ratchet. And you kind of look at a design like that and you kind of think, okay, so what's going on here? What's happening? And I sort of just looked at it, and it's actually one of the things in the way that I write, and it's terrible. It's a very bad habit that I always write, and I put 3 dots. I don't know why. It's a very bad habit. But that's kind of just what it reminded me of straight away, was this, this idea of the ellipsis, the 3 dots on the end of a sentence. And then, of course, there was a tiny little dot towards the centre of the formation. And I just thought, well, maybe I wonder whether this is a number in some way. So, of course, I picked the phone up to Michael and say, well, I've been looking at this, and what if these 3 dots are an ellipsis, and what if that is a decimal point? Where does that get us, sort of thing, And of course, then he went away and looked at it, and of course, then as brilliant as he was, he sort of picked it up straight away. He kind of could see what I couldn't see, which was the way that you could work the numbers out. And you look at it back, I look at that formation now and you think, of course, it's blindingly obvious, isn't it? But, when you've never seen something presented in that way before, it does take a special person to kind of look at it and see what's going on. So, it's, and that's kind of one of many stories, really, where, we would have an idea and, he would call me up and say, oh, it's your phone pest again, and of course he was never a pest. But it was lovely because it was nice to have somebody to talk to on that level to do with the circles. Yeah.
What Michael discovered was that if you divide the formation into 10 radial slices, like slices of a pizza, then moving out from the center through the first arc covered exactly 3 slices. Then came the decimal point. Moving through the next arc covered 1 slice. The next arc covered 4 slices. Continuing this process, moving outward toward the circumference resulted in varying numbers of slices, which gave a total of 10 numbers, which turned out to be the first 10 denial numbers of pi: 3, 14, 59, 26, 54. The 3 circles at the end were taken to represent an ellipsis, which means and so on and so on and so on, implying the infinite nature of the equation pi. In addition, the formation was laid over a brittle path which is used for horse riders to travel through the field. Never before or since have crop circles been placed in such a way. Was there a reason for this strange anomaly? As it turned out, this seemingly inconsequential feature actually provided a twofold surprise. The first surprise was that this brittle path gave Michael the opportunity to go in this crop circle with his wheelchair, something he hadn't been able to do for many years.
That was the last time I was in a formation, in 2008. It almost brings me to tears. It was wonderful. And the crop circles are well known not only for their inherent quality and art, but for their framing. They always have great respect for the field, the boundaries of the field, the events in the field, and the idea of a formation being smacked over a pre-existing landscape feature is so unusual, almost unprecedented.
For almost 20 years, the primary focus of Michael's work had been on the ratio pi and the squaring of the circle, which in 1997 he had discovered had been hidden inside many formations. The Barbury formation clearly contained pi, but the second big surprise came to Michael when researcher Bert Jensen discovered that this brittle path running through the circle was precisely located so as to establish one side of a square. By adding 3 more sides, Bert was able to show that this resulted in a perfect squared circle. It is fair to say that many people are completely unfamiliar with the symbology that lay behind this diagram. Essentially, it means the uniting of heaven and earth, material physical reality. Heaven is a place we all associate with paradise, where only goodness, peace, truth and love exist. Earth is unfortunately a place where many people have become more and more greedy and materialistic, where humans all too easily wage wars for resources such as gas, oil, and diamonds. The disease of lies and deception are seemingly at every turn. It is a place where, very sadly, there is an ever-increasing lack of love and compassion. But this planet has the potential to become a paradise if only human beings would choose to adopt more heavenly qualities. It is for this reason that Michael was so dedicated to this concept of squaring the circle. He truly wanted to see all pain and suffering in this world come to an end, and felt that if only us humans would change our ways, we could indeed bring about heaven on earth. For Michael, this is what the true meaning of the crop circle communication was all about.
Michael Glickman was the great philosopher of the crop circles. It would be very difficult to understand them without him. His analysis was so deep that made us thought in a different way. Probably for tourists and for people who visit them are just a simple way to present art. But behind that art, Michael Glickman found the real meaning. And it had to be a great mind to do that. He has to be considered one of the great thinkers of all time. And when people understand how important is this phenomena, we will also give the real statue to this incredible man. Every time I went to England, my visit to his home, my talks to him were the most expected time of my trip, because every time I visit him, I left enriched in myself, in my spirit. He was the one who mentioned and proposed that these crop formations were love letters that were left under the door for us to understand, because they mean hope and they mean future for humankind.
And why is it important to accept this for humanity?
Because look at the mess we're making. I think, you know, it's like we're in the sea, we're drowning, and they're not crop circles, they're life belts. They're life belts. Someone is throwing life belts to us, and we're saying, no. They're not proper life belts. We drown.
Is our last chance?
Yes, it was our last chance 20 years ago. We're right on the edge.
Are you worried about the world?
About what?
The world? The planet?
I'm optimistic. I mean, I think I'm mad, but I think the cataclysm that would be produced universally by the self-destruction of our planet is so grave that we will not be allowed to do it. I think they all hoped that we would find the strength and clarity to do it ourselves. But it's clear we're not. I mean, everything is gone. The ice caps are melting. What do they do about the ice caps melting? Oh, that's great. Now the ice caps are melting, it's easier to go in and drill for more oil. So they're now fighting about the land mass of the Arctic. They're doing maps of divisions of America and Scandinavia and Canada, and Russia's gone in and planted a flag on the seabed. What lunacy! I mean, it is oil which has caused this, and they're still scrabbling for more oil. Are we mad? Are we mad? We can't. We're living on a planet where babies die because they haven't got clean water. You know? This really upsets me. And yet, we are spending trillions pursuing wars which fundamentally are about oil. Here, in this country, this developed country, we cannot educate our children. We cannot look after our elderly people. Our hospitals are falling apart. And still, the highest aspiration for our two young princes, the sons of Prince Charles, is to fight in the army. Are we mad? We are crazy. We are absolutely crazy. I think that we are viewed from the above by our cousins like a Saturday night comedy show. You know, I imagine were it not so tragic, they would be in pain with laughter. One would hope that people, on approaching this, could be opened, softened, made more generous, made more loving, made more patient, made more reasonable. And again, it breaks my heart because the reality is they're not softened, they're hardened. Their eyes not open, they're closed. They're less considerate, they're less compassionate, and what I can do is say, well, that is what we, humanity, have to confront and go through now, and bless us all. And I wish everybody strength and happiness and everything, but I believe I'm shocked by how badly we behave in the face of this.
So I don't know what will happen. I do know that I feel an enormous weight of responsibility. The crop circle phenomenon is, above all, a curriculum, and I thrash around to find what is to be taken away and digested from the events of this season, and it's not pleasant. What I have learned really is how badly, thoughtlessly, inconsiderately people behave. We are offered what I can only now call the miraculous. We who are involved with this, I feel, are enormously privileged, truly blessed to be close to this unprecedented range of manifestation.
In his 30 years as a crop circle researcher, through his books and lectures, he literally touched thousands of people's lives and inspired many. Each year he would play host to people from all over the world in what he liked to call his crop circle tea times, where he would captivate audience large and small with his insight, quick wit, and a twinkle in his eye. He was truly loved by all those who spent time with him. A legend in the crop circle world, Michael will be truly missed, but his legacy remains with those he taught and inspired.